Um, Good morning. My name is Paul Julian, and I'm interviewing Ted Schmid and myself and uh, Joe Davey are interviewing Ted Schmid. He was a uh, sailor during the Cold War at a very actually at the height, I would say at the height of the Cold War. And we're in the Veterans Memorial Center Library. The date is April 26th, 2022. So I'd like to start with Ted, where were you born?
Steubenville, Ohio.
And who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My father, Theodore Schmid, was an engineer with the Pennsylvania Railroad. And during World War II, he was in the Pacific on a destroyer escort.
Okay. Also a sailor.
Also a sailor.
What was his rate?
He was a first-class boilerman.
Boilerman. And then did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have had two brothers and a sister, but none of those were in the military at all.
Okay. And what were your, and so with that, what was your brothers and sisters feeling about the military, and in particular about you enlisting?
All of my brothers and my sister were younger than I were, and the brothers were supportive of the United States military. My sister was iffy.
Iffy.
Depending on what day it was.
Okay. And this is pre-Vietnam.
That's correct.
Okay. And then Ted, what primary and secondary schools did you attend?
Primary schools was just the high school, Steubenville High School.
Okay.
And the secondary schools were just what the Navy sent me to.
And so, essentially, you went to, did you go to the quartermaster, which is what you were, I'm sorry.
Right.
Did you go to the quartermaster A school?
No, this was just on board ship.
On board ship, okay.
Yes.
So you struck for that?
Correct.
Okay. Did you hold any jobs before service, before entering?
Yeah, just a part-time job when I was in high school. I worked for a paint and wallpaper company.
Okay. Pretty hard work, or?
Oh, no, it was easy.
Easy.
Yeah.
Did you leave any, besides your family, did you leave any, girlfriends or pets or anything behind?
No, I did not.
Okay. So, Ted, why did you go in to the Navy?
Having grown up with the family in World War II, an uncle was in the Army. It was in Europe. My father was in the Navy. He was in the Pacific. I was being raised by my grandparents and my mother. And I can remember a little bit, some of it, like in the evenings you would get the broadcast over the radio from Gabriel Heater, and you would pick up English. And I don't know, it was just a military-based family at that point in time. And patriotism was extremely, it was a way of life. When I was growing up, they used to have parades every year, and then the Army National Guard would bring the tanks into town. And one year, which was amazing, the Air Force had taken a B-29 bomber, and they had removed the wings, and they mounted the bomber on a flatbed truck, and it came into town, and all the kids, like myself, were just ecstatic. We got to go through that B-29 bomber. Oh, it was just wonderful. So patriotism was very strong.
Mhm.
So naturally, when it come time, when I was of age, I had to join.
Okay. And Ted, like many of the people that we interviewed, did the GI Bill or anything like that, was that big in your decision?
No, had no bearing on that. I wasn't aware of the GI Bill until after I was in.
Um, is there a particular reason you chose the Navy?
Because of my father. See, my father was in World War II, but then he was recalled for Korea. So we left Steubenville, Ohio, and went to Norfolk, Virginia for a year or two, and then back to Ohio.
And let me digress. Ted, what did your father and mother, what did they do for a did they, what was your father's occupation?
Oh, he was an engineer for
Engineer.
the railroad.
For rail, you said, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
And then your mom, though, she
was a housewife.
Housewife, okay, which is typical.
Back then,
Yeah.
yes.
So, where was your initial point of entry?
It was Naval Reserve, Steubenville, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And then boot camp was in San Diego, California.
San Diego. Well, you're lucky.
Right.
I came out of Cleveland, and they sent me right to Great Lakes.
Oh, gosh.
And then as far as getting into learning your trade, what did so you like just OJT?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Did you had to demonstrate you had
It
a
started-
aptitude, right?
Actually, it started off because you're a seaman and you're doing the deck work, and you have to spend your time on the bridge as a seaman. You did your time on the bridge as a lookout and as a helmsman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because a lookout and helmsman, I was observing the quartermasters and what they did and the points of navigation. At that point in time, Loran was just coming aboard.
Mm-hmm.
Was not widespread. When Loran first came out, believe it or not, the Loran units were 3 units which stood maybe 2 foot wide by maybe 18 inches high, and there was 3 of them. And Loran had to be generated with radio signals that you manually used to fix your positions. So well, it was
Take your
quite
bearings,
interesting.
take your
Yeah,
bearings,
it's
huh?
not like this.
Yeah. We did way well before GPS.
Oh yeah, way before. But it was it was a forerunner of the GPS.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting, and the chart readings and navigation was good. So I became a striker.
But the how many quartermasters were there when you struck? Was there a lot of?
There was 4.
And so you must have got along with them and.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you have a particular one that, like, you considered like a mentor?
Yeah, his name was Butts.
Mm-hmm.
He was a first class,
Mhm.
and he had a very mild temperament,
Mm-hmm.
and would take his time with you.
He was a career, right?
Yes, he was. I think that when I went to work with him, he had like 16 years in the service.
16 years. So he was well within that Korean War time, right?
Oh yeah.
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 What was the most difficult part of striking from the deck into, a quartermaster? What was the most?
It was actually a pleasure to do that.
Really?
There was no difficulty,
No difficulty?
whatsoever. No, it was, having observed them as
Mhm.
being a helmsman and a lookout, just a question of learning the charts
Mhm.
and learning the equipment that you had,
and the
how
charts-
to take an azimuth, and it's just the way it was played.
Yeah.
And then too,
A lot had to do with your mentor, right? He was
exactly.
took your time.
And then being a quartermaster, because all my time was now devoted to the bridge, you got a better insight of what was happening, how the ship was run,
Mm-hmm.
the chain of command,
Mm-hmm.
and that brings up a lot of stories. But
If anything, like really moves you, please
Okay.
Please entertain us.
Okay, I will. When I first went aboard ship, the commanding officer, his name was Kelly, and the executive officer, his name was Catechizine. So, and then the other junior officers, I don't recall them too much.
Department heads, yeah.
Yeah, Kelly was a firebrand. I don't think he could survive in the Navy today because of his,
Hothead.
oh my God, he was hot.
Mm-hmm.
Catechizine was kind of mellow
Mhm.
compared to him.
Mm-hmm.
But as the story goes with the Cuban crisis, we'll get into Kelly more and more, because he was instrumental not only in the Cuban crisis, but he was instrumental in the ship itself. It got an award. My God, I can't remember the name of the award, but it got the Excellence Award as the top ship in the Atlantic Fleet for battle readiness.
And so you have something. So you had some decoration on your side for that, right?
Oh, for him, not for
Yeah.
me.
But then you have decoration on the ship.
Correct, yeah,
Yeah.
decoration. And, it's like the Cuban crisis itself. There was no ribbons, nothing. The ship was recognized,
Mm-hmm.
but we were not.
Did it get it during that period? So that, how they
I really don't know. Nobody was awarded anything for the Cuban crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked about it, I was told that it was such a narrow time frame that there was really nothing. So be it. That was it. And then the ship was recognized for its part, and it's documented as such.
Mm-hmm. So did you go directly from boot camp to the
To the landing?
Blandy?
No, actually not. I actually went from boot camp. I went to the USS Interdictor, which was a radar picket ship. The story behind the picket ship was, if you're familiar with the DEW line, there was a need to set up a perimeter around the United States using radar. So on the north, we had Canada, which provided us with all the radar surveillance we needed.
All at fixed stations, right?
All the fixed stations.
Yeah.
But now your oceans were open.
Mm-hmm.
So starting on the Atlantic and as well as the Pacific, they started off where the Canadian radar ended if you were moving south.
Mm-hmm.
They moved out, I think 400 miles, and they created a circle, a 25-mile circle off the coast, and that's where you would put a ship, and they was confined to that circle, which would give you radar coverage. And those were scattered all the way down to Cuba. And on the Pacific,
Did it require, Ted? Did it require a lot of use of the fleet? Did it require a lot of ships?
well, there was 2 ships per station, and I think there was like 5 or 6 stations on each coast. So they used a variety of ships. The AGR was a converted Liberty ship.
The Liberty ship, to refresh my memory,
Liberty
Ted,
ship-
they were a troop carrier?
The Liberty ship was a cargo ship
Cargo.
built to make one trip from the United States to Europe during the war. When the war was over, they put them in mothballs. Well, they decided that it's still good for a few years. They took it out of mothballs, and they got rid of all of the cargo paraphernalia that was on board. And then they had to weight the hull down in order to let her sit where she should, because being empty, she was going to ride high.
Mm-hmm.
Then they put the latest and the greatest radars on it. And then they would send you out for 30 days, and you would sit in a circle just monitoring. They also used destroyer escorts as picket ships, whatever they needed. But there was there, and then from there, I went over to New London, Connecticut, and then served a short time on a submarine. And then from there, I went to the USS Blandy. And then that's where all the good things happened.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, Ted, what was the most difficult part of the military lifestyle for you to adapt to the Navy lifestyle?
I think it was the, I don't know how to say this.
Don't worry about it.
It was too much bullshit.
Really?
Yeah.
Hurry up and wait. And,
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
It was total bureaucracy, and
Yeah.
I just, a lot of it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And when it came time to re-enlist, they asked me to, and I said, I don't think I'm cut out for this. Not again.
And what do you think was the easiest part?
Oh, the easiest part was just enjoy yourself, enjoy the people that you're with, And it was
So
it
good
was an
people.
enjoyable experience.
Because of the camaraderie.
The
and
camaraderie,
yeah.
yes. When if you wake up in the morning with a smile on your face and you go to bed at night with a smile on your face, you've had a wonderful time. And that's
Did that describe your years and the?
yeah. I just it was fine. You wake up in the morning, have fun, enjoy your people. You work hard, but it was enjoyable. I didn't have any enemies, so.
Now, Ted, so we talked about what do you call it, radar picket ship?
Yeah.
You talked about what was the other ship you went to after that?
After that was the USS Sablefish.
Sablefish.
Right, that was out of New London, Connecticut.
And was that? Did you say that was a submarine?
Yeah, the school boat.
The school boat?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was on the Sablefish, a school boat, for a short period of time, and then went back to the Servant Fleet, which was the USS Blandy.
Okay. And a Blanding was, where was it home ported?
Newport, Rhode Island.
Newport, Rhode Island. Yeah. Okay. So you're on the Blanding. We're getting to probably the crux of the culmination or the peak of your really that's history making. And so you're on the Blanding. How long were you on the Blanding when this missile crisis?
We had just came off of the med cruise, and we were back in Newport, and we were out again for a couple of weeks. Coming back into port, about an hour before we got to port, the captain informed us that we would not be staying. We were going to come in, tie up, we were going to resupply on what we needed, and we were immediately sailing out again.
This is Newport.
Out of Newport. So we came in.
How long were you in the med?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah. And
Before you did that, did you have any? How was that for you?
the med was a good cruise. At the end of the med cruise, we had to take. We got into a storm off of Nova Scotia, and we were escorting the carrier Roosevelt, and we were the flagship of the destroyer squadron. Well, when we got into that storm, we could not stay up with the carrier. We were taking on too much water. That's when you were looking up at the water, and then you were looking down at the water. I don't know how, I can't tell you how big the seas were, but I can tell you that we're standing on the bridge sometimes. I was looking up at water, and then when I was on top, I could see the whole world. I could see the other ships. So the carrier decided it would slow down to accommodate us. When it did, it started taking white water on the flight deck.
Wow.
So
Those are
the
some big waves.
so what they said was every man for himself. Every ship is going to find its own speed because of the size of the vessel. What can it do in this kind of ocean? Well, so
Were you a quartermaster at that point?
yeah, I was, and it was a very unique experience because the ocean was gray, the sky was gray, everything was gray, except when you got the waves were breaking, and then it had a green and white. But it was quite an experience.
How long did that last?
It lasted about 1 day,
One day? One full day, huh?
and it destroyed us.
Really?
It did. It took the flag bags off the bridge. It took all the lifelines off the ship. It ripped the depth charges off the stern. It broke the 5-inch gun mount. It sprung the reefer hatches on the front. It destroyed the breakwater. So when we did come out of that, and it broke several ribs on the ship. So when we come out of that, we didn't go home. We went to Boston shipyards.
How long were you there?
I really don't recall. I think it was about a month, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty intensive repair.
They rebuilt us.
Yeah.
And then back to home port, and then back out to sea, and then when we came back in, that's at the time.
Okay, and just one last thing on that. On the Med, for 3 months, did you see a lot of the Europe or no?
Well, we seen Italy, we seen France, and we seen Spain.
Spain. Okay.
So that was.
So that was was that pretty neat for you?
Oh, it was, absolutely, because you often read about it, but how often do you go to Pompeii? It was, Pompeii was remarkable.
Okay.
Naples was.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
No, Naples wasn't worth talking
Pretty
about.
dirty, yeah.
But then Spain, Barcelona was wonderful. France was good.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the highlight.
Okay. Now, what the main course of highlighting, the main historical part of your experience. So you pull into port, and he said, "By the way, you're not." Pick it up from there.
Okay, we're going into port, but we're not staying. We're going to reload the ship. Mm-hmm. When we came in, the trucks were waiting for us. We restocked all our fruits and vegetables and food. We had plenty of ammo, so we didn't need to bother with that. And so immediately we took off and we turned south. We came out of Newport, and I'm not sure the time frame, but we got down to somewhere around Virginia, Carolina, somewhere in that vicinity. And we ran across a Russian trawler, a fishing boat. But that fishing boat had more antennas than we did. So let's go back to Commander Kelly, the captain, mm-hmm. with his temper and his, I should say, temperament. Mm-hmm. He looked at that trawler, and he mentioned to Gazine, he says, "I'd be willing to bet that I could put that ship on the bottom before they could get a message out that they were under attack." He said that because the ship that I was on, the Blandy, had 3 5-inch 54s and had twin 350 anti-aircraft weapons. So just the weight alone, he could plus the torpedo tubes. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was a passing thought.
Mm-hmm. That's just an example of
That's
how
an
he
example
thought.
of this is this man's mentality.
Yeah.
This is, I told you he would,
gung ho.
Oh my God! With anyway, we proceeded on down. We get down into the Cuban waters, and we join up. We're with the carrier. in another destroyer squadron as well as ours. And our
How
first...
long did it take you after you saw the trawler to get down into position?
Oh, it was probably just another day.
Another day.
Yeah. We got down in there, and the first thing we did was we intercepted a merchantman coming from Russia. And they had their missiles that were up on the main deck.
And how would you know that they were missiles on the...
Well, it was, the ships were spotted actually by aircraft and being tracked. So we did an intercept on them.
An intercept, what does that entail?
Well, we just came up alongside of them and politely asked them to stop, which they did. And then to uncover all of their missiles, take all the canvas off. We had picked up an interpreter, a Russian interpreter with us. So once the ships, we got alongside of them, in fact, we had to board one, but the uncovering of the missiles, and once they were uncovered, then the P2s and the P3s came in and did the photographs of everything that was on them. And then we told them to turn around and go home. So we had just
Would they have to comply or no?
Yes, they had no choice.
Yeah.
It would have. Nobody challenged. A merchant marine is not going to challenge a warship. You know, maybe today they would, but back then, no. So anyway, the merchantman turned and went back home. About that point in time, we picked up a sonar contact. So
Down subsurface. Yeah.
that was the submarine, and was not one of ours. So then the chase began, which was a 2.5 day chase. So we got on him.
It's constant, 24/7?
24/7. He was trying to evade us, and we were staying on top of him like a hound dog. And it was good. I was on the bridge, and I'm listening to the contact between the sonar room and the captain. And they would talk, the sonar would tell you everything that they could hear.
That was a good vantage point to know what was going on the bridge.
Oh, when you're on the bridge, you get it all. This is beautiful. So we're on there, and a little history on this, what we're coming to. Kelly, in the normal operations of the ship, when you have practice, you go to battle stations, and then you have to simulate that you're in a damage control. We've been hit.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Right? Well, Kelly decided he wanted to make that a little more realistic. So what he used to do, he would call the gunners and the gunner's mate, and he would say, send up a box of hand grenades. So they would send a box of concussion grenades up to the bridge. So when the captain was ready, they would throw a grenade over the side, and the ship would shudder just a little bit, just to let you know that something was there. And then he would call out, damage at this particular place.
So this is damage control, okay.
For damage control, all right? So this was to make it, I don't know, theatrical. But keep this in mind. So now we're down there and we're on top of the submarine. And at one point in time, sonar notifies, he said, they've just opened a torpedo tube. This brings up a big question. What now? We don't know what now. Nobody knows. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they released a noisemaker, which is a decoy, trying to shake us. But that was
the idea. What said that you followed the decoy?
No, we did not. We
But
stayed.
that's what they wanted you to
They
do.
wanted us to follow the decoy, and no, sonar was able to differentiate. It took a little while to unscramble what was going on, but we stayed on the sub. So the captain's getting a little impatient with this submarine down there. So he thinks that by his experience of throwing hand grenades over the side, give this little shudder, that must really aggravate the hell out of the submarine. Well, okay, we'll entertain that thought. So, gunner's mate brings up another box of hand grenades. And every so often he would throw a couple of hand grenades over the side just to see if he could mess with their ears or whatever, I don't know. But this was also noted in the footnotes from the Russian submarine after this was all over. They didn't know what the hell it was. They just knew that there was bangs going on, but they couldn't find out what it was. Well, because the submarine would not respond to his hand grenades and they didn't want to come up, he actually sent a request to Washington that he could sink it. Washington naturally said, no, you can't sink it. That's part of the archives in D.C. It did not mention anybody or did not mention any ship. It just said a captain from a destroyer did make a request to sink a submarine, and he was declined.
So that's been documented?
That was documented in D.C. So that, you know, my story's confirmed. So anyway, what happens?
Did you eventually pick up, so you, they sent us decoy out, the submarine sent a decoy out, so what else?
Okay, once the decoy went out and we ignored the decoy, we stayed on the sub. Back then, the submarines were diesel electric. Well, a submarine can only function for a couple of days before it runs out of air. They have to come to the surface. So after a couple of days, lo and behold, the submarine comes up to the surface. And he goes back on diesel power. And I don't know what communications were going on because that was beyond the ship's, you know, I don't know what's going on. But the submarine actually went back to Russia. But what we didn't know, as being on board ship, we did not know what the Russian submarine is or what it was doing or who was on that sub. Now, after the fact, come to find out, the submarine is carrying a nuclear-tipped torpedo. And their instructions were to fire that into the fleet if push come to shove. One of the officers on board that Russian submarine was ready to go. He was ready to turn it loose. Then the other officer, I don't recall his name.
Vasily Arkapov?
Yes, he was the man that evidently was familiar with what would happen in a nuclear situation. So he was instrumental in diffusing the situation, but the situation was much broader than what most people know, because it involved negotiations between Russia and the United States.
There was behind-the-scenes negotiations.
Behind the scenes, Kennedy was up there, and Khrushchev was up there, and Khrushchev says, you know, you have missiles on our doorstep in Turkey, and we have missiles on your doorstep in Cuba, so we can negotiate. So that was part of the negotiations. We gave up what we had in Turkey, and in turn, Russia backed out of Cuba on the nuclear end of the business. And after that, everybody went home.
And that, so can we say, Ted, based on this National Security Archive, the day says, indeed, one of the incidents, the effort to surface B-59 on 27 October 1962, occurred on one of the most dangerous days of the missile crisis, only hours after the Soviet shoot-down of a U-2 over Cuba as President Kennedy was anticipating threats to invade Cuba. So, so it you see, so it was around. So was it 27? What do you know? What day? Any idea? Was it end of October or was
Yeah,
it
end of October.
Okay.
Yeah. That was
And-
the last day.
Right.
The last day that we were active. That's when the submarines left.
And so as far as your part in it, that's what your mission was. And when the submarines left, you just
Right.
you probably got communication that
Well, the fleet said, okay, it's the
crisis is over.
the crisis been resolved.
Mhm.
The fleet is the Russians are leaving. While this was going on, also we had gunfire support charts for Havana and other parts of Cuba. So if the invasion were to happen, we had the coordinates for all of Cuba to bombard it.
Mhm. So the question is, so it would be probably about so by October, suffices to say, by October, the crisis is over before 1 November.
Correct.
Okay. And can you just give a real brief, like what you get, how you see, based on your experience, how you see what's going on now? Do you see similarities? I mean, you're not on a ship, and we're
No.
not trying to track and
Right. What scares me today, back then, when we went in negotiations with Russia, we had something to give them in return they could give us. So in today's environments, we have Russia painted in a corner, and we have nothing to offer them. The way things are going right now with Sweden and Finland, going probably within the next month going into NATO, it further threatens Russia. The way we're resupplying to Ukraine further threatens Russia. At the beginning of the Ukrainian situation, the president of the Ukraine informed Russia that if they would sit at the peace table, that they would give Russia the territory that it had won several years ago, and they would stop it. But Russia refused because the Russians want to destroy it. They want to completely do away with the Ukraine. It's going to be nothing but farmland. There'll be nothing left if they have their way. But if you paint somebody in the corner, you've got a hell of a problem.
That's where you think we're at now, Ted?
I think we're pretty much painting Russia into a corner.
Do you think that, and we'll stop on this, do you think that, you do see similarities?
Oh, absolutely.
Even though we're not talking on the ocean about an island, we're talking about land, and the geopolitical is that you have all countries, or a lot of countries, part of this alliance that opposes the Russian philosophy, Russian ideology, and that's what Putin's looking at.
Yeah, because what Putin wants to do is reconstruct Russia the way it was at the end of World War II, make it grand and glorious. But Georgia and other countries abandoned Russia, and Putin's trying to put it together, and he can't put it together. It's a broken egg. With what's going on now, there's more countries going against him than there are going for him.
Okay.
The recent elections just 2 days ago in France, the
Le Pen, the conservative,
conservative,
and also very pro-Putin.
okay, and she lost, which was a blessing for NATO because she did not want NATO at all.
Yeah.
So France is now pretty much locked in with NATO for the next so many years. But with the way Russia has dealt with the situation, other countries are saying they're now afraid of Russia, and they know they
For
can't.
example, you mentioned Ted, Finland.
Sweden is another one,
Right.
that aren't NATO.
Ted,
They're
Ted,
neutral.
normally, you tell me, Ted, during the World War II, didn't they stay neutral?
Yes.
But I think Norway's taken over though.
Well, they did not take up arms. So, and they felt that if they didn't take up arms, Russia wouldn't come in and beat them up. But with what they've observed with Ukraine, they now say that's not true. We can't trust these people anymore. When you see a military such as Russia's using now, and you see the way they're bombing, not military, but they're bombing civilians. You know, they're destroying hospitals, they're destroying apartment buildings, they're just leveling cities. So, scorched earth, right? And okay, if you go into battle and you win the battle, you took the city. What's left? There is no city.
So that's
it's just
what
a
your
piece
theory,
of property.
Ted, is that they just want to kill it. They just want to.
They want to obliterate it. They just want it gone.
And so in that essence, and we'll move on. That essence that then he'll get, even though he won't be able to get resources per se, production or natural resources, he'll have that buffer.
Correct.
Okay. So you get back on track. So you were given the orders sometime around like October 30th, October 31st of 62 to go back.
Go back home.
No other mission, just to go back.
No, we're going back to where you started from. We were heading to home port. We were interrupted for the Cuban. That's over, so you can go back to your home port now. And then pick up the normal operations.
So you were real quick in for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you sail directly home?
Yes, we did. We went straight back to Newport.
Okay.
And we spent, I guess, a week or so there and then back out to sea again.
Okay. Did any other things during that? So now, when you, so you were in from May 60 to May to 1965. So it was more than.
It was over 3 years. Yeah, it was
over
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
So anything else, Ted, that you thought, that really left an impression? After the what is going to be the fall of 62, when you get into 63, 64, and then you were discharged in 65. Anything?
Yes, there was one other thing, and that was the assassination of Ken Kennedy. Again, you're on a ship and you're at sea, and all of a sudden you get word over the loudspeaker, your president's been killed, which leaves another big question mark. Okay, now what?
That's about a year later. Huh?
Yeah. So now you say, what now? And so we just went to a state of readiness until it was decided that it was, it wasn't the Cubans or Russians coming after us. There wasn't a prelude to an attack. So you went back to a stand
How
down.
long a period was that?
That we
you
were
were kind of
on.
in a state of readiness.
It didn't last but maybe a day or two.
And did you get underway?
We were underway. We were on board.
Oh, okay.
In fact, we were doing radar surveillance on Cuba at that time. So
Okay.
it was just one of the oh my God situations.
Okay. So you did the rest of your time, and then do you recall the day your service ended?
Yeah, it was December of '63, and I walked off the ship and put on civilian clothes. So that was the end of it.
And
Went back to my life.
where let's stop at that point. Let's stop at this point.
Okay.
Let's take a little break.
Sure.
So if we can just once again, do you recall the day your service ended? And tell me about that again, Ted.
Oh, well, the day my service ended, it came up, they made one more sales pitch to get me to re-enlist, and I said thank you, but no thank
They
you.
offer you anything?
No, back then they did not. It was not, at that point in time, there were enough people that they didn't have to wave carrots.
I see.
So,
No re-enlistment bonus.
no bonuses.
Okay.
It was, if you like it, you can stay. If you don't, well, see you.
So it's more of an acknowledgement that you made the cut. You could stay if you wanted.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Where were you when your service ended?
Newport, Rhode Island.
And then, did you return directly home?
Actually, I didn't. I went to Springfield, Massachusetts, and I got a job working for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft in Hartford, Connecticut. And then I was with them for a couple of years.
What did you do?
I worked with the propulsion systems for the lunar excursion modules.
Were we talking space?
Yeah. Pratt & Whitney was manufacturing jet engines, but they had the experimental lab. Apollo 13, when it had the incident up there, the fuel cells is what caused the incident. We were manufacturing the fuel cells. So, in turn, you manufactured your own electricity, and the byproduct was water. The water's what caused the problem
I see.
in space.
So the 2 years in that job.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then
what
I
did you-
left there. I went back to work for Quonset Point Naval Air Station, Quonset
Okay.
Point, Rhode Island. Okay, so I moved back to Newport and worked at Quonset Point in the aircraft industry. Got a job as a metalsmith. And when I worked for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft, they sent me to school up there, so I learned a little bit of metalworking. So I used that to get a job as a metalsmith, working airplanes.
Is that like a sheet metal worker?
Sheet metal, yeah. We fabricated, the planes come in with
But it's a
damage.
high-end sheet metal worker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if your plane comes in damaged, we'll fix it.
Mhm.
So,
What year is this about now? In the 60s?
60s, there's probably 67,
60s.
somewhere around there.
Okay.
66.
Okay.
Yeah, 66, I believe it
Okay.
was. I went to work for Quonset.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working there, and Vietnam was cranking up at that point in time. So they had when an aircraft is damaged, they have a planner and estimator take a look at it, and then they make a decision. If the plane is beyond the capabilities of the squadron to maintain it, then the planner and estimator goes and looks at it. And they have a choice of saying, okay, we can send a crew over here to fix it, rather than you ship it back to the facility in the States. So that's what they called a mod team. So when I worked at Quonset Point, I got on the mod team. So I was doing traveling, again, for the Navy, but as a civilian.
When you say, where would you travel then? What was?
I went to Spain. I went to the Philippines. I went to Vietnam.
Vietnam.
Went to Okinawa.
When it was hostilities?
Yeah. We flew. We were fixing aircraft that were shot up.
Only if it could be salvageable.
Well, yeah. I'll give you an example of an A4 aircraft was the predominant ground support aircraft.
Was that Warhog?
No, the A7 was a little airplane. No, I don't know.
So it was an A4, huh?
A4, yeah, it was ground support.
Mm-hmm.
It was about half the size of what you fly today.
Mm-hmm.
He went over on ground support, and he picked up probably 15 bullet holes, and he came back to the ship. Well, the nose cone was pretty well shot up, so we replaced that. Then he had the fuselage had some holes in it, so we had to patch all those up. But those are some planes that you could actually fix. They weren't the modern, like the fighters that we have today, which you can't fix.
Mm-hmm.
You have to replace panels.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could patch.
Mm-hmm.
So we did those. And then also, we also went out to aircraft carriers.
Mm-hmm.
If they had a plane that went in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
we'd go to the carrier and fix it, or helicopters, which was interesting. I went out to,
You actually go aboard?
yeah, we flew out to the helicopter. What would happen is the P&E people would go out, and when they evaluated the aircraft, he would order everything that you needed. And then when everything was compiled and shipped, then they would send us out, and everything would be there for us. And probably,
Would they get it quickly, huh?
yeah. One interesting thing happened when I was doing that job. There was a helicopter that had some light damage on it. It was a SH-2, and we went out there, and right in the overhead.
That's not a Sikorsky, is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
Sikorsky,
Okay.
yeah. You know, the SH-3A was the big bird, and then the SH-2 was the little one,
I see.
right? And they was just for, pick up pilots if they go down. So anyway, there was a crack in one of the pieces below the engine that was picked up on inspection. So I went out there and looked at it, and it was a very simple fix. There was a small crack, and all it needed to be what they call a stop drill. You go to the end of the crack, and you drill a hole, and you buffer out the hole, polish it. You go to the other end of the crack, and you drill a hole, and you polish it. That stops the crack from spreading. And then you just put in a small plate over the crack with a couple of rivets, and that's all you need. So structurally, that's all that's required, and everything's fine. So the pilot comes in, and he looks at it. He said, "That's all?" And I said, "That's all." He said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you going to fly with me?" I said, "I'd love to." Good. So I got a flight of my life on a helicopter. He put that helicopter through everything you could possibly put it through.
Seriously?
To stress it out.
Just to see
Just to see
it'll hold up.
it would hold up. So he would run it, and then he'd say, look at it and say, give you some more. So I had a half hour of amusement park, which was a beautiful time.
Ted, how long did you work for?
For Quonset, until they closed it. They shut it down when the government shut down. They closed Westover Air Force Base. They
Was that like a base closure?
base closure. Quonset Point was a base closure. Newport, Rhode Island cruiser destroyer that was closed down.
The base.
Everything was closed. I think the only thing left up there now is the War College.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Well, about how many years do you think?
oh, that was in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So then I came to Florida.
Okay, and did you get into the space industry?
No, I couldn't get into the space industry, but I had put in all kind of job applications. I ended up working for the telephone company.
No, okay. So, AT&T or Bell South?
Well, it was Southern Bell back
Southern
then.
Bell. Okay.
Yeah,
That's after the breakup and
before the breakup.
before the breakup.
Yeah. So I got a job working for them, and then I stayed with them until I retired.
Okay. Was it digressing a bit? Was it a great readjustment to civilian life?
No, not really. It was, I had not been in there long enough to become total military, with military thinking. I never did get out of the civilian.
Did you use the GI Bill?
Yes, I did. When I got out, I went to college on GI Bill.
And what kind of degree did you get?
I was just an associate.
But what was it in?
Oh,
What was it in? What was the what was
business.
the business?
Uh-huh.
Did you continue any friendships after
No, we were too far apart, and we knew people, but in time they just, you just kind of separate.
Okay. Did you join a veterans organization?
I did not join any veterans organization until I moved to Merritt Island.
Okay. And what did you? Which was it, Ted? Which one?
Well, the first one I joined was the American Legion,
Okay.
and then the VFW.
VFW. You did still both involved with both?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever attend any reunions?
Yes.
Did you? Well, how was that? Where was that?
I went to a 50-year reunion.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where did you go? Where was it?
Ohio.
Ohio. What part?
It was Steubenville.
Steubenville.
The high school reunion.
Oh, okay.
Right.
But any service reunions?
Oh, no.
No. Okay.
No.
So then, could you tell me how the service changed you?
Maturity.
Maturity.
Yeah. I grew up. Just about the time I got out of the Navy, I started to grow up.
And how did the service affect the way you relate to others? Did it affect the way you related to others?
I really don't know. I can't tell you if it did or it didn't. It
Okay.
just,
How did the Navy service experiences? Can you think of any direct effects to your life?
yes, I think so. A sense of organization, a sense of responsibility. And
Something that you didn't have when you were working on the deck?
no, it's
You just do what people tell you to do when you're on the deck, right?
yeah, you just you don't
It's up to them, and it's their problem.
you when you're in the onboard ship, you have a plan of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You read the plan of the day. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think.
Yeah.
You only do what's on the plan of the day.
Right.
If you start thinking, you're going to get in trouble.
But Ted, when you went and became a quartermaster, you had to do some thinking.
Oh yeah, then you did, right? Yeah,
Do you have any life lessons you learned from your military service? Any life lessons
oh well.
where it enabled you to navigate, no pun intended, navigate your way through life, that it helped you?
Oh yeah, you learn by observing what you're in there. That you have to get objective, and then proceed to achieve that objective.
Okay. So it kind of made you maybe goal oriented.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Okay. Um, how has the military service impacted your feelings about war and the military?
I
Has it?
I support our military 100%. Right. I know what they're up against. I'm with them 100%.
Okay. Um, so, what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
I wish they would just wake up and understand the role of the veterans and what they actually do. I don't think anybody knows what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They see it. They see you at a parade. They see you at what we have here when we open to the public, and we try to tell people what they are, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think one of the biggest things the United States did, which to me was wrong, was when they abolished the draft.
You think that should have kept it?
They should have kept it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at other countries that still have, quote, look at Israel. If you're a citizen of Europe, Israel, man or woman, you will do 2 years in military service.
Mm-hmm.
That gives everybody a sense of what they are.
So freedom's not free.
Correct. If you look at some of these other countries, they are also in the same boat. They are support. When I talked to my grandson several years back. I said, "Well, why don't you go in the military?" He says, "Not me." He said, "They're going to shoot me." That's a mindset.
Yeah.
He was destroyed by his mother
Mm-hmm.
on,
Anti-war.
anti-war.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Which took away
I'm a warmonger.
warmonger, but also about service. The fact that,
Yeah,
for one, you don't have to be on the front lines, a foot soldier on the front lines. You could be
Right.
in the back supporting your country. You can be in the background.
Yes, you can.
Um, what would you like people to remember about your story?
Just to take what happened then and relate to what's happening today. There's a hard line. It is a repeat of history. There's not much difference between what's going on today and what happened
maybe
then.
different characters, somewhat different characters.
Exactly.
Circumstances very similar.
Right. What you have is you have the bear from the north, Russia, the United States over here. Comes back down to a piece of property. Back then, it was Cuba. Today, it's Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference?
Yep. Is there anything that Ted, that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover? Anything else you'd like to bring up or talk about?
No, not really. I think that pretty much covers what the highlights of my military career.
Okay. Joe and I'd like to thank you for your time, and we consider you a patriot, a strong patriot.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
Uh-huh.